To really understand the events that occurred on September 11, 2001, we have to start at the beginning. It all began with oil. In 1933, Aramco, formerly known as the Arabian American Oil Company, was established. With this, the Saudi monarchy gave the American company Standard Oil rights to look for oil in the eastern province. Throughout the years, they came across many reserves that America wanted to protect during this time, since the U.S. was in need of oil during World War II. Because of this, the U.S. had more power over Aramco. But after the war, Saudi Arabia pushed for more power and eventually took over in 1980. Even after this, their alliance remained. 2 years after World War II ended, the Cold War began. The government in Saudi didn't like the Soviet Union because of their ways of communism, so the U.S. and Saudi Arabia had a common enemy. Then, in 1951, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia established the Mutual Defense Assistance Agreement. It provided for American arms sales to Saudi Arabia and American training of the Saudi military. This all leads up to a big event in the Cold War, the 1979 Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. With the Saudi government worried with the Soviets' influence into the Middle East, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia decided to ship weapons to anti-Soviet mujahideen that are fighters in Islamic countries against non-Muslim forces. Following this, in 1990, the Berlin Wall had come down, and Saudi Arabia had nationalized Aramco. This sort of pushed the U.S. out, but something brought them back together. This was the Persian Gulf War. Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait to try and take their oil industry. This threatened Aramco because of the border and oil reserves shared with Iraq. A few days later, American troops were sent in, and in 1991, Saddam Hussein was pushed out of Kuwait. The U.S. needed air bases at this time, so they put some in Saudi Arabia, but they never left. Muslims were not happy about this because that was their holy land. The fundings mentioned earlier had helped create a stable foundation for the group Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda, meaning the base, was founded in 1988 by Osama bin Laden, Abdul Azzam, and several other Arab volunteers. They were Islamic extremists and a terrorist group. The leader at this time of Al-Qaeda was Osama bin Laden. He wanted to put pressure on the United States to pull its troops out of Saudi Arabia. With Al-Qaeda, he presented pressure to the U.S. by attacking. Some of the major terrorist attacks conducted by Al-Qaeda include the 1992 bombing in Aden, Yemen, which was an attempt to eliminate American soldiers on their way to Somalia to help with an international famine relief. Another would be the first bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993. This occurred because a truck was driven underneath the World Trade Center in the underground parking lot with a bomb strapped to it. Lastly, in 1998, the U.S. embassies were attacked in Tanzania and Kenya. This killed over 200 people and was the last major attack to happen before 9/11. All of this built the foundation for the attacks that occurred on September 11, 2001. There was a total of 19 hijackers. 15 of the 19 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. 4 of the hijackers, including Muhammad Atta, Marwan al-Shahi, Han Hajur, and Zaid Jarrah, all went through flight school. This later gives them the ability to become the pilots of the 4 planes. All 19 of them had U.S. visas with their real names on them. On the morning of September 11, 2001, all 19 hijackers boarded 4 commercial airplanes that were headed towards different parts of California. The first of the 4 planes, Flight 11, takes off at 7:59 a.m. Following this, Flight 175 takes off at 8:15 a.m.
And I think there's mates that we can't breathe. I don't know. I think we're getting hijacked. Which one?
This was the first contact to ground personnel. At 8:20, Flight 77 takes off. At 8:37, Boston Air Control Center alerts the military. 8:42 a.m., Flight 93 takes off. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 strikes the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City. Many messages and calls to loved ones were made by those inside of the towers and on the planes to what, for most, was their last. One of the messages left at 9 a.m. was from Brian Sweeney, who was aboard Flight 175.
This is Brian. Listen, on an airplane that's been hijacked. If things don't go well and it's not looking good, I just want you to know I absolutely love you. I want you to do good. So have a good time. Same to my parents and everybody. And I just totally love you, and I'll see you later. Bye, babe. Hope I call you.
At 9:03 a.m., Flight 175 strikes the South Tower of the World Trade Center. At 9:37 a.m., Flight 77 strikes the Pentagon building in Washington. 9:59 a.m., South Tower of the World Trade Center collapses in approximately 10 seconds. At 10:03 a.m., Flight 93 crashes into a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. At 10:28 a.m., the North Tower of the World Trade Center collapses. 2,977 people died from 9/11, 343 of whom were firefighters, 60 police officers, 8 EMTs, and 1 patrolman from the New York Fire Patrol. In the place of where the towers used to sit is now a 9/11 memorial and museum. The names of every person who perished in the terror attacks of 1993 and September 11, 2001 are honored in bronze around the twin memorial pools. In conclusion, 9/11 sparked nationalism in the U.S. and brought everyone together and sent a message throughout the country.